Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and this afternoon I'm delighted to be joined by Lawrence Conley. We'll also have Ian Conroy coming into the show from New Zealand as well. And if available, we may also have Liam Carrigan all the way in from Japan. Multi-talented, international, continental, that's what it's all about. And I'm delighted to get Ian and Liam into the conversation as well. So thanks everybody for getting involved. This is A Celtic State of Mind. For the next hour, we're going to be talking all things Celtic. First off the bat, Lawrence Conley, you're sitting there with the big cup, the cup with the big ears. And on today of all days, 55 years since our second European Cup final appearance. And obviously in that particular game, we lost to Feyenoord. Did you realise that it was the 55th anniversary today, mate?
Yeah, I'd seen it on the Tinternet, a few comments about it. But big what if moment, eh? It's, I think, Big Yogi. He always said Jock blamed him for missing that chance. That's part of the reason he left. And I think all the players said Jock probably underestimated Feyenoord, but it kicked off a golden spell for Dutch football. But yeah, unfortunate for us, we didn't add a second European Cup,
Without a doubt. And if you think about it back then as well, Ian, I'll come to you because I know that obviously the club is built on the success that Jockstein brought to the football club back in the 60s and the 70s. The second European Cup final. We went on to appear, of course, and in a further two semi-finals against Inter Milan and Atletico Madrid. And always use the stats, the data that between 64 and 76, we appeared in no less than 9 quarters or further in Europe. Not all in the European Cup. Obviously, the Cup Winners' Cup, we were doing pretty well in the early days, 64. And also in 66, we got to the semi-finals in relation to games against MTK Budapest, Liverpool. These were the glory days, and that's what it's built on. That's why when we talk about Champions League endeavours and ambitions, Ian, it's all been built by that team that Jock built back in the 60s and the 70s. 55 years since our last final against Feyenoord. But it did coincide with that incredible total football era of the Dutch, Ian, as well. And obviously in that Feyenoord team was none other than Wim Jansen.
Yeah, good old Wim, true hero for us Celtic fans. But, I mean, when you talk about that sort of history, I think that's why Glasgow Celtic endures as a sort of a European name. That's why loads of people remember the Subbuteo team, of a certain vintage, and I think that's of course, and it did coincide with that kind of Dutch total football thing. But it wasn't too dissimilar to how Celtic played and how Jockstein had us playing. I think when we showed up in the final in '67, for example, we came from nowhere to a lot of people. And I know sort of locally with the Portuguese fans, we were kind of, we were favoured by them. But I think we became a lot of people's second team because of the brand of football we played. It was cavalier. It was how football should be played, and how more, I suppose, noticeable was it when you played against that kind of Italian defensive, nullifying brand of football. It was a chance for us to show how swashbuckling and how romantic our football was really, and I think that really was. Obviously, that was the start of it, and what a shame that we didn't build upon it and add one or two more European Cups to it. But I think, the legacy still endures, and I think a lot to do with it was the kit. It was obviously the famous kit, the style of football, as I said before. But it's just that whole romance of Celtic was born then. It was the '60s as well. Everyone looked cool in the '60s in the sun. Not that we had much sun then, but when you see the pictures of Jockstein and that with this, and the players with the shades on in Lisbon, they could have been in a Bond movie. These stills that you see,
absolutely. By the way, they always go on about how the Inter Milan players in '67 look like movie stars, but when you see Bertie and Big Yogi and they've got the slicked brow creamed hair and the shades and all that, they look every inch the movie stars, don't they?
Absolutely, they looked amazing. So, I just say it was just that was my sort of my view really. But what a great sort of legacy to sort of build upon and sort of start to what we know now.
Yeah, 5 years ago, actually, some Feyenoord fans came along and spoke to us, Liam, about the fact that that was their Lisbon, if you like. They were celebrating the 50th anniversary. They were coming over to Glasgow. They were soaking it up. And actually, you can look at it. Ellen Mannings, we did an interview with her, and she ended up at Ibrox because Feyenoord were playing Rangers not long after it, and she had the Acsom t-shirt on and all that kind of stuff, Liam. So we continue to build friendships, but again, it did coincide with a great run of Dutch success, both internationally and on European stage as well. But I mean, I've said this a few times recently, Liam, there has only been 16 players in football history who have represented a Scottish team in a European Cup final. And everybody can tell you the Lisbon team, but I bet you not everybody can tell you the team that lost against Feyenoord in the San Siro, can they? And it's a shame for the guys. Guys like Evan Williams, dearly departed just recently, who had a great game and goals that night, but they're just not etched in the folklore as the Lisbon team were, and understandably so. But it is a shame for some of the guys that appeared in there.
I think it's also a sign of the coverage that football got back then compared to now as well, because we all remember the Seville team. And, you know, as magnificent as that season was, it's not close when you consider getting to the European Cup final versus getting to the UEFA Cup final. You know, what the team did 55 years ago was a much bigger achievement, but did not have the exposure that the Lisbon team, the Seville team did. So ultimately, that's the one that seems to have stuck a bit more in the memory. And I think that's maybe a bit of recency bias, but also just the fact that we're getting wider coverage of football now than we did then.
Do you think some of that was we were favourites for 70? We went in and we were expected to win that final.
Yeah.
We weren't expected to get to UEFA Cup final, never mind win it. You know, it was the achievement just getting there. Whereas in 70, you know, we were red hot favourites to win it.
We were. And, you know, I'm going to read the team out actually and see just who I've spoken to from that team. And obviously they all tell the story about underestimating this Feyenoord side. Some reckon it was one of very few big errors that Jock's team made in his time at Celtic. But the Celtic team lined up as follows: Evan Williams, who I had the absolute pleasure of speaking to for the Nearly Mocking documentary. And God rest him, he passed away not that long ago. At right back, actually, Davy Hay started the game, so the Quality Street kid was playing at right back. We also had Tommy Gemmell at left back. He scored in 2 European Cup finals, unbelievably. And then in the centre, you had Billy McNeil and Jim Brogan. So Brogy was part of this team as well. You look at you move into the midfield, you've got Bobby Murdoch, Bertie Auld, you've got Jimmy Johnston on the right, John Yogi Hughes, Willie Wallace, Bobby Lennox. What a team. An incredible team. But I think a lot of them were disappointed in many ways that George Conley never started the game, Lawrence, because Conley had been so brilliant against Leeds United in the semi-final across 2 legs. He scored at Elland Road. He actually scored a second goal just after half-time, but it was chopped off. And he was dropped for the final. And a lot of people reckon that, you know, that was one mistake because we had been so dominant in the midfield against Leeds United in the semi-final.
Yeah, you're wondering if George just thought I'm going to go with the experience. Boys that won it before, and they'll be enough to deliver. You know, I think that team had set such high standards. I think that's really where the disappointment comes from. You know, red hot favourites, quarterfinals, semi-finals, and yeah, really underestimated Feyenoord. You know, I think for the players, it's, you know, was always a regret for them not to win that one. Bring another European Cup home.
Massive regret. I spoke to Danny McGrain about this because he and Kenny Dalglish were taken along as hamper boys. They were carrying the kit hampers and all that. Can you imagine that? Danny McGrain and Kenny Dalglish, they're your hamper boys, right? And it was all about giving them a bit of experience about, you know, preparing for a big game across in Milan, etc. And Danny, I asked him, he's quite philosophical at the best of times anyway, but I asked him about the regret. He said, you know, there was a feeling that it's all right, we'll get to another one. There was that feeling, that confidence. We'll get to another European. We'll put this right at some point in the next few years. It was not to be. And of course, we did reach another European final, the UEFA Cup in 2003. And it's something that we continually try to do is progress in Europe. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. We're going to get some of your comments in on the chat as well. And obviously, we've got loads to talk about. We'll start with yourself, Ian. not much of a fallout on the football side, really, in relation to the Glasgow derby, but plenty of fallout elsewhere. But let's start off with the action. And were you impressed with the performance at the weekend? We had 4 starters out of the team, obviously Schmeichel and Johnston, Kuhn and Jota all missing. And we went out there and obviously we took a bit of a battering in the first couple of minutes, lost a goal, pulled it back and ended the game stronger. Nothing to concern yourself about. It's a 1-1 draw. But what did you make of the performance, Ian?
I thought it was kind of predictable, really, that it was going to be a bit like that. Sort of last game, there was nothing really on it. And I know, obviously we'd lost the previous 2. So we were looking for sort of a bit of a revenge, really, or to sort of just, get ourselves back into the, as they had sort of have the bragging rights, but we didn't really do it. Certainly not in the first half. Second half, I thought we looked more ourselves. But I think we struggled with that diamond shape that Rangers kind of pulled out the bag in the first half. So that packed middle, it just meant we were just passing across the bat again and not really sort of able to penetrate through. And they just let us have the ball in the wings, and it just everything sort of just seemed to sort of taper out a little bit. So nothing really to write home about. We should have won it, really. I think obviously the Idah. I think if Idah had less time to think about it, I think he would have smashed rather than try to chip the keeper. I think he would have, if he put his foot through it, I think he probably would have scored. But obviously, ironically, they go up the other end and score their goal. It was a bit frustrating as well to see Raskin kind of boss it, and I know he had a goal disallowed by a fraction, but it was another header he won against Scales. I think Scales. I think these players are adequate for the Premier League. Maybe the bigger games in Europe and maybe against Rangers, they maybe are found want a little bit. I put Greg Taylor in that sort of bracket as well, maybe a little bit. He was kind of a bit hit and miss again, but again, I think if he stays on, fine for a league season as a deputy to Kieran Tierney. And obviously that we've all been saying in the group chat, about our thoughts on what Maeda should have done in the last seconds of the game, whether he should have squared it or not. I think he should have, but I think he's earned the right, really. If it was Maeda of a couple of seasons ago, I probably would have been cursed on television. But because he's been
even last season, yeah, you're right. Yeah, that would have been the reaction, without a doubt.
Yeah. But this season, he's earned the right, I suppose. So if he'd scored it, we would have went, oh, fantastic, just like the wee man. But it wasn't to be yesterday. So, one of those games, really, it wasn't much on it. But I hope it's not like kind of, we're talking about the sort of the 70 final with Feyenoord, and there was a lot of chat sort of saying that we kind of thought we were just going to turn up and win it. Hopefully, there's been a few little warning signs and shots across the bow that Rangers have sort of got our measure and things like that. And if they do sort of get a bit of investment in strength and start to, because we weren't amazing this season. We've been amazing in spells, but we haven't been a fantastic. I think Rangers have been really, really poor, and the amount of points that they dropped is as much as we've been brilliant. So if they do sort of improve in any shape or regard and narrow that gap, then I think we need to make sure that we're focused and we can keep pushing ahead and not be caught, really, because it'd be self-harm if we do.
Some brilliant points here, Ian, that I'm going to pick up on. The first one being, we're on our way, Liam. And we always caveat this, not taking it for granted. We're on our way. We have the ability, I think, and we have the opportunity to win a treble this season. However, I agree with Ian, it's not been vintage insofar as I still look at this team. I still look at this Brendan Rodgers team as a work in progress. There are still areas within even the starting 11 that you think to yourself, we can do better. We absolutely can do better. There might be some players who Brendan Rodgers doesn't think long-term are going to fit his plan in the way that he wants to play. Yet, we're still dominated over the piece. And the one little blot in the copybook is the fact that we haven't, in the individual games, meaningless or otherwise, we haven't quite dominated Rangers in the head-to-heads in the Glasgow derbies. The record books will tell you that. It's not something that you can really argue against. And then you are watching these individual games, and Brendan is constantly getting asked about, oh, that means they're making progress. No, it doesn't mean that at all. Because to be a winner and to be a success, you need to do that against St Johnstone, against St Mirren, against Ross County. You need to do it home and away, and you need to do it over the entirety of a season. So Celtic are the best team in the country, and I think by a distance, 17 points at the moment. However, it still feels a little bit, Liam, like a work in progress. It looks as though we can still tweak it, we can still improve it, both at home and in Europe.
In the long-term scheme of things, the fact that we haven't absolutely scalped them every time we've played them this season is probably actually a good thing, because it's enough that the fans will keep the pressure on the board, who will then hopefully in turn give Brendan Rodgers the money, because it's like, look, we're fortunate that they have been absolutely rank rotten against everybody else this season. We're fortunate that they have essentially become to us what Aberdeen are to them. And we're going to be champions. We're hopefully going to wrap up the treble, but there is very, very clear deficiencies and very clear room for improvement in a number of areas, and hopefully the board take that on board. This, the last 3 games against them for me have been warning shots. It's like, okay, we're champions, we're the best team in Scotland, but if we want to stay there, we have to move forward on this team. We have to develop it. We can't just sit still. We do not want another repeat of what happened in 2020, because we believed we just had to turn up.
Yeah. Talking about, it's interesting how we can link this in right back to 1970, thinking that it was just to turn up. Apparently, the players I've spoken to anyway, and quite a few of them actually in that team, said that they didn't know about the top Feyenoord players. And often what would happen is Jock's team would have a dossier. I mean, this was back in the day where the manager would go and watch the team in advance. He wouldn't send somebody else to go and watch them, although Sean Fallon did go on errands many, many times. Jock's team had gone and watched Feyenoord, and the report back was that they were mediocre. He did not highlight individual players who were going to damage us. And I referred to the brilliant interview he gave after the Partick Thistle game, where they pumped us in the League Cup final 4-1 back in the early 70s. And he says, it was a reminder that we can be beat. So I get what you say, Liam. It's no harmed us. We've not lost the trophy, when we've dropped points and been beaten against Rangers. But it is a warning sign that, we still need to strengthen. We need to go in this summer and we need to tweak various areas. And we'll be talking about some of those areas. Celtic's run to the European Cup final in 1970. It was Basel. I think we now call them Bal. Benfica, Fiorentina and Leeds. And my argument would be, at that time, Lawrence, that was a tougher run than getting to the final in Lisbon. You look at the quality of the team there. Benfica had won the European Cup. That's Eusebio's Benfica. We beat them on the toss of a coin. Fiorentina, Leeds United, the greatest Leeds United side they've ever had. And obviously we overcame them in the semi as well. Biggest attendance ever. And a European match was in that game at Hampden Park. An incredible run, but then we underestimated the final opponents.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's still a disappointment amongst all Celtic fans. Great team that Jock had put together. I suppose you could say the Lions, all bar one of them were signed by McGrory. That there's more of Jock's men and of Jock's players in the 70 team. It's just interesting that the players thought they would have that other opportunity. Because we were so good in Europe then.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have another opportunity. We'll put this right. And listen, to go back to the weekend's result, I'm glad that no one got injured. I know we were joking about wearing hard hats, but yet again, more missiles in the park. Goalkeeper in danger. Sinisalo thought he did a good game for us. And I get what Liam's saying, the performances against Rangers, previous to the weekend's game, we'd lost the last 2. But the first 2 games against them, we won. And they were the only games really where trophies were at stake. By the time we played them the second time in the league, we were so far ahead. We knocked them out. We obviously won the League Cup. And I thought at the weekend we were the only team that was going to win it. Bit shaky start, but certainly made a better second half. First half, Taylor gets pulled back. Idah could have squared Forrest in. Idah shot. Yeah, I'm with Liam. Why is he trying to chip that close into the keeper? Just smash it by him. Puts 1-0 up. And I thought we were the only team that kind of looked like winning. But
Yeah, and you know what? It was similar in the second half the last time we played them at Celtic Park, where we've obviously brought back the 2-0 deficit, and we looked like the only team that was going to win. There was a wee bit of cutting edge lacking, I think, in that respect of Idah going through. He didn't make great contact with the shot when you watch it back. And you're right about the layoff to Forrest. Not much has been made about that Taylor tug on Taylor, by the way. Not much at all has been made about that.
Penalty. What's VAR doing? Listen, is he going to receive the pass from Celtic player? I don't know, but he's run into the box. Rangers players, not even trying to run, just pulled him back. Just pull him back. And whether Taylor could have kept his feet or not, it's a foul. And certainly all the Scottish press coverage of the pulling Dessers in the box in Europe, we all know that these are stonewall penalties, apparently, pulling the player in the box.
To be fair, Lawrence, we will talk about VAR because obviously they got involved again. I mean, they tried the linesman or assistant referee tried his best to chop off Idah's goal, and obviously Raskin's goal gets cut off as well. And it's a good point Ian made in relation to that. He should not be able to twice win headers in our box and put the ball in the net, which he's done this season. I made the point yesterday that Scales, I love Scales to bits, but every single time Celtic lose a game or lose a goal, you're looking at who was responsible, who could have done better, and that's just fine. You're analysing the game, and when I'm looking at that particular moment, I'm saying Scales should have done better. On the last occasion, it was Schlupp that should have tracked the run. And then the comment yesterday that I read was that it wasn't Scales' man to track. I get that. He's not going to be marking him because obviously it's a midfielder's job to mark him. But he's got to track that run. Scales is the only guy that can win that header once he makes contact with it. Scales is the guy behind it, and he's pulling at his jersey. We shouldn't give him the freedom of that box to just score the goal. And he shouldn't get the freedom of the midfield either, Ian. That player should not be dominating the Celtic midfield, and that's an issue. Is it an issue of physicality? Because, I mean, I look at him and think he's not a physical player. But for some strange reason, we weren't able to dominate him. And that's an issue in that particular game. Sinisalo will get back to the problems with the objects being thrown, etc. We're going to cover it. Of course we are. I want to know everybody's thoughts about that as well. But, you know, we've taken the records in more ways than one, Ian. We've taken the records from the record books and we've taken simply the best in typical Celtic fashion, tinged with a little bit of humour. Some of these other fans from other clubs have no sense of humour, Ian, but we turned it on its head to the point where on the forums last night, the Rangers fans are saying that we need to disown that record. It's time to let it go. It's now owned by Celtic. That's just typical Celtic, isn't it, Ian? You just turn it into a humorous scenario where we're just laughing at you. We're just laughing at you. We don't take it that seriously. You can stick your guard of honour, but we're going to steal your song off you.
I always thought it was funny. I mean, when they came up the leagues and they got back into after the second attempt, they got into the top league for the first time in their history, and the coach arrived at Celtic Park for one of the Celtic the Glasgow derbies, and the simply the best was Blair on the coach, and it was Alan Partridge-esque sad. I thought, when he goes like sad, it was really sad, and the fact that they kept going. Whenever I think of that song and in Rangers, I always think about Mark Hateley and his balding mullet.
Yeah, but not the few said it was like the hind end of a baboon. Mark.
What's the difference? What's the difference? And he talks a lot of Blasky Whoop, that man. I've seen a couple of podcasts with him,
he just wouldn't let it go, would he, Ian? He kept thinking it was going to, I don't know, somehow miraculously grow back. And the fan base who applauded such monstrosities as Mark Hateley and Seb Rosenthal's Fizzogs seem to take great delight in pointing out that I look like I'm going to a 1990s disco with my hairdo. But that's fine. At least it's no Mark Hateley's. That was a shambles.
I'll caveat as well as Brad Pitt. I'm not, and I'm certainly not sponsored by Vidal Sassoon, as that's plain to see. But as I say, it was just my memory of those days, those dark old days as a Celtic fan in the 90s, where they were winning everything. Obviously by ill-gotten means, we know now. But So that's my abiding memory of sort of Simply the Best, really. But I think really, if to truly take it, I don't know if it should be on Flag Day or whatever, but we should have Limmy's Tina Turner doing the halftime draw. I think that would be fantastic. And the baton can be passed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had a made-up memory, Ian, and I had to ask the Acsom group. I had this made-up memory that back in the dark old days of entertainment at the football, remember Fergus tried to introduce proper entertainment at half-time or pre-match, and he was bringing on the kind of lookalikes. Remember that? And at one point, it resulted at one point in a Cher lookalike singing with Jimmy Johnston. It was just bizarre to the point where you think, did that actually happen? There was a picture on the front cover of the Celtic View with wee Jinky wearing the 94-95 hoops, you know, the one with the big Umbro insignia on the hoops. Yeah. And there's this lookalike, and I'm pretty sure, remember the Natalie Robb? She came on and sang a song as well. You remember that?
Yeah, I mean, the actress.
The actress, Natalie Robb, she came on and she sang a song at Hampden Park. And I'm pretty sure there was a Rod Stewart lookalike. And in my mind, I'm seeing a Tina Turner one, but I might have made that up. You just never know. You know what I mean? Maybe I wanted to see Tina Turner, but Brian McClare tells a great story about Simply the Best. Simply the Best used to get played at Old Trafford. And it was Brian McClare that got it changed to This Is the One by the Stone Roses, because he says the tune was absolutely rotten. He said it had nothing to do with Rangers kind of trying to claim the song. He just thought the song was rotten. So he changed it to This Is the One. We've touched on the one-on-ones, Liam, and Brendan Rodgers has come out and revealed that Daizen Maeda was actually over in Japan because I think his wife is due to give birth to their third child, and she's over there at the moment. So as Daizen can, he obviously done a midweek jaunt over to Japan and back without anybody noticing.
Only Daizen could do that, because honestly, see, whenever I do one of those flights, I'm done for about a week. It's just a horrible flight going from Japan to Scotland and back. Honest to God.
Right. So what's he done that in? What's he done the return journey in? 4 days, Leo?
Yeah. And at the fastest possible route, it would take about 16 or 17 hours. Because there is no direct flights from Scotland to Japan. You have to go via a European or via Dubai. You have to transit somewhere.
Right. And I think, obviously, there's that personal element where it's like, you know, back in the day, you've probably got some football figures, Roy Keane especially, saying, well, it's not him having the kid, is it? Kind of thing, right? But Brendan has looked at the situation and thought, give him a bit of leeway, allow him to go to Japan. His kid wasn't actually born. He comes back to Scotland and he gets thrown right into the game. Did he arrive back on the Saturday morning? I think Brendan had said, Liam. So you take all that into account. That's going to affect the player. Of course it is. And I don't think Daizen had a bad game, by the way. I really don't. I mean, he was pivotal in the equalising goal. But even this morning, the debate rages on as to what Daizen Maeda should have done. Was there a wee bad touch running up to? Did it bounce a wee bit further in front of him than he had envisaged, do you think, Liam?
Do you know the most annoying thing about this, right? I was watching the game with my dad, and he had one of those really convoluted accumulator bets on, where it's like so many corners for each team, so many fouls, so many shots, whatever. Basically, we were at the point where they'd all come in, and he needed Daizen to get a shot on target to win £100. And because Daizen opted to try and drag it round the keeper rather than just prodding it towards the goal, it didn't count as a shot on target even. You know, it didn't need to be a goal. It just needed to be a shot on target, and my dad would have got £100. So,
no.
Daizen, you owe me a score, mate.
You certainly do. I mean, see, at that moment, the reason I'm asking about that, it seemed to run away from him just ever so slightly, right? And I think at that moment, he's changed his mind. At the important moment, he's changed his mind. Now, Liam Kelly I actually think he did well with Idah's chance in the first half. And he did well to spread his body at that point. And it's only at that point, Liam, that I think the square ball is on. Up to that point, I'm the one to square it, because it's Daizen. He's having the season of his life. You do what you want. Dink it over him. Smash it past him. You do what you think's best. But at the moment where he's made that little hesitation, I think you square it to Johnny Kenny.
All right, look, hindsight's 2020, but you know, any of us are in that position. We've got the ball 8 yards for goal, seconds to go, at Ibrox a chance to score the winner. We're taking the shot. No, but nobody is not taking that shot in that position. I don't care who you are. So I definitely don't fault Daizen for taking it on himself.
Does he get a rest now, though, Liam? And this is a genuine question. I mean, obviously, the kid hasn't been born yet. He might have to go back to Japan.
He'll be, if he's not already back, he'll be heading back directly. Because it's just one of those things that, like, he has to be here when the Wayne's born. It's like a traditional thing. So he will be back. He won't play next week, I don't think, because we don't need him to. Reality, we didn't really need him on Sunday or either, but it was just, it's because of this manufactured rivalry. We had to play him. And, you know, I stand by what I said. We should have played a reserve team. We almost did with the injuries that we had, but it was an ultimately meaningless game. And we shouldn't have been risking anybody who wasn't 100%, Daizen included.
Well, I don't think he's going to have a chance, really, between now and the cup final. There's going to have to be changes. Obviously, Alistair Johnson is being managed. There was chat around Carter Vickers being managed now between now and the Scottish Cup final. Daizen Maeda, personal reasons, obviously, may not be available. But we do have the small matter of 3 league fixtures before the Scottish Cup final. And it's all about how you approach that now. Bearing in mind as well, Schmeichel, Johnston, Kuhn and Jota were all missing at the weekend, Lawrence. It's obviously an opportunity, but I think what it also does is it shines a light on the fact that we don't have a massive amount of depth in the squad, do we? Because if you imagine, right, taking Carter Vickers and Maeda out of the weekend's starting 11, then you're starting to see players who haven't got a lot of football in their legs.
Yeah, I think, you know, if Maeda comes out, that would have been 3 year top wingers out, you know. Him, Kuhn and Jota, I think, is definitely top 3 wingers. Carter Vickers, yeah, I'm surprised we played. I thought we might have went with Rocky. You know, you want to keep Carter Vickers fit for the final and hopefully winning another treble. But there's areas we know we've got to strengthen in, and I'm sure Brendan, you know, his team's never finished, really, is it? He'll always be looking to improve season and season, regardless of what's happening elsewhere. I think he said as much after the game. So, what do we do in these 3 games? Senisalo, I think, keeps his jersey, and I think that's on performances. He's done nothing to deserve getting dropped. The other ones where there's been injuries, well, it's time for boys to step up and maybe show what they've got.
Absolutely. It's the opportunity. But before I go to Ian, I need to ask about that European Cup. So that's a new addition to the Skylark, am I right?
It is indeed, mate. Got all the lines on this side of it, and obviously got the UEFA badge on the other side. But it's a new addition, yeah. It was well received on Sunday.
I bet it was. Is that a prerequisite for anyone with a Celtic bar in their back garden?
I think it should be, mate. It should be, yeah. I think teams are supporters of other clubs also have bars in the back gardens, but apparently they have, much like the clubs, they're banned having cups.
But they got bikes, racers.
It's all bottles in for me.
Who remembers the grifters with the three gears on the handlebar? That would be a grifter. That's a perfect bike for a Rangers fan, right? There we go. We're talking, of course, about some of the.
You said grifter. I thought you said sister there. I was like, wait a minute.
That's an easy mistake to make, Liam. So we will be talking about some of the changes, and we need to talk about the type of team that will be facing Hibs, for example, in the next game. So we'll be running through that. But you mentioned Rocky there, Lawrence. I know you're a big fan of Mike Nawrocki, but I don't see it mentioned anywhere else. I watched the Celtic players walking through to obviously a round of applause for the Club Player of the Year dance. And they were all looking very suave. I mean, you know, some of them had the Dickie boys, you know, three-piece suits on. They looked absolutely minted. And then Mike Nawrocki turns up. He's got the white shirt on. It's outside the trousers, and he's wearing a pair of white gutties. Ian, I don't know if he's a style icon, because as you've already said, we are not. Even though Jim last week was talking about fashion, and somebody came up to me at one of the gigs at the weekend and says his name is now Jim Dior rather than Jim Orr. But Mike Nawrocki, tuck your shirt in, son. Put a tie on. At least wear some shoes. What's going on, Ian? Is he just some kind of maverick?
Well, that's it. He's obviously a rebel, but that's how I used to look. When we used to play football, I don't know if you had a school uniform, but we had a blazer and all that.
Right.
But you take your tie off and you play football at lunchtime. Your shirts are all hanging out, and then when you had to go back to class, you had to put your tie back on, tuck yourself in. That was what I used to look like. So maybe that was the look he's going for. But yeah, it was a strange one actually, because everyone is. It's nice to get dressed up every now and again, isn't it? It's not often you get a chance.
I know.
So yeah, maybe he's just he thought it was a bit daggy, a bit kind of like, oh, I'm not doing that. It's a bit stuffy. I'm young, cool, and hip. Just by saying that, shows I'm not, young, cool, and hip, granddad. But yeah, so he just looked like he stuck out like a sore thumb.
I know. It's one of the ones where, again, going back to something that happened last season, he did the old Jota thing and went down the Brazen Heath. He went down the Brazen Heath and he got interviewed down there without getting the okay from the Celtic media team. He seems like he's just a bit of a maverick. He just does what he wants. And on one side of that, I quite like, but on the other, as you say, get suited and booted, son. Cantona got away with it when he was at Manchester United. Eric Cantona got away with doing that, turning up with red Nike trainers on, but I don't think Nawrocki's earned that right just yet. What are you saying, Lawrence?
See, Lubo was down the Brazen Head for the game.
Yeah, no.
The Brazen, yeah. I think Rocky's maybe he's got a last minute ticket to it or something. He wasn't expecting to go and picked him up for the pub or something.
Is he a +1?
I think so, mate. That's what it looked like.
But it's
all come out, they're either black tie or black suits with white shorts and normal black tie. And he's just turned up as if he's been pulled out of a pub. Right, you can come.
That's incredible. It really is. We were backstage with Lubo on Saturday night, and one of his friends, he always comes over with an old pal of his, and he was like, yeah, we're going to the Brazen Heath to watch the game tomorrow. And I was like, really? And I'm asking the agent, and he's saying, aye, they're gone. I told him not to, but aye, they're gone. So hopefully everybody in there really enjoyed the company, because the wee man is an absolute genius.
He was
a gentleman. He ended up at somebody's barbecue. I've seen that on Twitter as well, just sitting there casually having a bottle of beer with a group of Celtic fans. I love that. But let's think seriously about the team that's going to line up then, because Lawrence, I totally echo what you've been saying there about Sinisalo. He just came right under the radar, and he's gone into a team. I'll throw this one over to you, Liam, because I know you're a goalie and you would have been watching this with interest. But he's coming to a team where Schmeichel's a dominant force in this team. It's not just like one in, one out, and you've got big gloves to fill. Sinisalo has never been the subject of conversation negatively on Acsom since he came into this side. And in actual fact, he had a very good game against Rangers, and that's one of the biggest tests he's going to get.
He honestly was my man of the match when looking back on it. Made some great saves, but also I think just the strength of character that he showed. He was, having bottles thrown at him, etc., not fazed by it. For such a young man, he was marshalling that defence. He was shouting. His distribution was excellent. I've got absolutely no hesitation whatsoever him becoming Celtic's #1 keeper, whether it's a year down the line or later. He'll do for me.
Yeah, he really is. And what is that you're wearing? Is that one of the Love Unites shirts that came out?
Yes, it is. Yeah,
it's about. Is it a goalie top or just a leisure top?
No, it's one of those kits that they release but never actually wear in a match. So it's a kit, but it's not specified who actually wears it. So
even though I did a lot of research into the Celtic jersey for the book, and I'm something of an anorak when it comes to this, even I am losing track of what's a jersey and what isn't these days, to be honest with you. Jungle Line throws this one into the mix. Does Eddie Howe get a good reception? Right. It has finally been announced today, that we're going to be involved in the Adidas trophy. It's like the Wembley Cup. It'll probably never be played for ever again. Didn't we go down to Sunderland and play in some Dafa Bet trophy and beat them? We absolutely pumped them. Remember that? That wasn't that long ago.
It was about 7 months or something.
Yeah, we absolutely destroyed them. Adidas trophy is being contested between the two League Cup winners of Celtic and England. They've thought long and hard about this, right? And it's Celtic versus Newcastle. I think they've got a fixture then. They've figured out, let's get an Adidas link in there. Eddie Howe is coming up the road. Absolutely. Used to love playing against English opposition in games like this. And it reminds me of certain matches like the Alan Shearer testimonial. And it also reminds me of the game at Celtic Park when we returned to Paradise. We probably released a video all about it back in the 1990s because nothing much else was happening. Who cut the ribbon? Rod Stewart. I think Big Billy was there. Billy Connolly was there as well. But I think Rod Stewart cut the ribbon. And Celtic played Newcastle United, and David Ginola was meant to have signed for us, but then he signed for them. Newcastle, Celtic, it's not in the season ticket though. So they're asking 25 quid a ticket. Lawrence, there's a wee wry grin on your face there.
Oh,
It's
mate,
one of the, I mean, how do you get the fans in?
They should have them in, didn't they? They should be
putting
putting
the fans in. How do you
Yeah,
get the
they've
fans
got money
in?
in the bank. Not money in the bank to give the fans it. But it just means you're saying the two British League Cup winners. Pretty sure there's been 2 tournaments billed as that, isn't it? The British League Cup and Celtic won them both.
Well, you're actually bringing to mind the Coronation Cup, right? When Celtic obviously famously won it, and Neil Mockin had just signed for the club and he scores in the final. But it was Celtic v Hibs, which I don't think is what the authorities and the establishment expected, because Celtic weren't a great side that season. But Celtic won it. Interesting enough, and I love this, right? So this was the Coronation Cup, right? And this is what I find really, really interesting. Ronnie Simpson played for Newcastle in that tournament. Ronnie Simpson was the Newcastle goalie in that tournament, the Coronation Cup. And he went on all those years later, about 15 years later, to play for Celtic in the European Cup final. That just shows you the incredible nature of that man's career. I'm going to ask you the question, does Eddie Howe get a good reception? I don't think he'll get a bad one, will he?
He wasn't up to the job, was he, mate? I know he kind of... I think Celtic, though, he dragged it out by a good bit, but at the end of the day, it wasn't for him. Ange came in, and the rest, as I say, is history. Gave us 2 good years, and Brendan's back, and it looks like going to be winning trebles again. I'm kind of happy that we missed Eddie Howe. I don't think people will bother too much. One way or the other.
Well, to be honest with you, I think because Ange came in and was such a success, that I don't think we look at Eddie Howe and regret, do we? He's spoken about it a few times. And I'm just asking, Celtic Girl, in relation to people getting banned, I'm not quite sure what you're referring to. Notice they never get banned. It's always us, same on Facebook. Right, okay. In relation to Facebook, Facebook is a community in itself. We don't do that. It's automatic. If people are putting things on there that Facebook don't like, they'll remove it. I get asked at least once a day, 365 days a year, why I have been removing things on Facebook. I couldn't possibly have the time to do that. It's an automatic admin. So unfortunately, if you're posting something, Facebook doesn't like it. It's not going to be done by a human like me. So yes, we're going to be facing Newcastle United. The one thing I would say, it's not a complaint, it's an observation. These friendlies used to be on the season ticket. But Ian, it's not going to happen. And I do look at these games and I look at the size of that stadium and I think, how many people are going to be buying outside of season ticket holders? How many people are going to be buying tickets for 25? Try and just pack the stadium out. I don't know. Is this going to be the first appearance of Kieran Tierney back in the hoops? Is that going to be one of the selling points? I'm not sure. But these friendly games are sometimes hard to push, and that's why I would rather see them on the season ticket.
Yeah, club like no other, as usual. I think we're just, again, aping the EPL, where they sort of, they'll just keep squeezing the sponge. I think it'll be maybe half full at best. You never know. If it is Kieran's first game, maybe they're banking on that sort of selling the tickets. But why change it? You need to get value for money for a season ticket, and it's just the bare minimum. It's like here's an analogy for you. When you used to get like a mobile phone, and you used to get a charger and headphones. Now you buy them, you don't get them.
I know.
You pay more money for them. It's like.
Yeah.
It's diminishing. Everything's diminishing. Every decreasing circles. And I think that's just the way modern life is, and modern football is. But I bet in Germany they don't do that. For example, where they treat fans like fans. I bet they don't do that in Japan, Liam.
No, you get a season ticket. You get every game, cup games, everything.
Yeah. So it's just another way. And you're talking about kits earlier on. A bit of a bugbear of mine. I love kits. I love all that kind of stuff. But the chain shorts we've got now. It's every little opportunity to just fleece. You obviously you don't have to buy them. There's no one got a gun to your head, but people want to go and see football games and so-called glamour games against the EPL. They'd be worth a watch. If I was at home, I'd be going, I'm sure. But if I had a season ticket, I'd be a bit annoyed that it wasn't part of that when it used to be in days gone by.
It just makes it more of a spectacle. I know that for a while there we were doing the almost annual fundraising games. We played Dortmund not that long ago as well. I think they're great occasions, but the attendance started to diminish, so they stopped them annually, and then now it's just ever so often. We love a friendly. It's great to get opposition at Celtic Park. And, Newcastle, I don't know, do we have a good relationship with them? I would say so. There's been a few connections over the years. And I'm going to bring up some of the comments being made by our audience here. Ian Roy liked Peter Beardsley as a player. How could you not, by the way? That was
Class.
one class.
Almost
Celtic fan as well.
Was it Billy almost signed him?
Well, yeah, it was. It was Billy McNeil. You're right, Lawrence, because we got that out of Tom Grant. Tom Grant, former director at the football club, who was the only member of the board that remained after Fergus came in. So he must have had something about him, Tom. And he spoke about trying to sign Peter Beardsley. And what a signing that would have been for Celtic. Celtic fan, and we played Newcastle in the Peter Beardsley testimonial as well, which reminds me about the Alan Shearer one, having done an event really recently with Charlie Mulgrew. Charlie Mulgrew played against Manchester United in the Roy Keane testimonial, and he played against Newcastle United in the Alan Shearer testimonial. Now, this was prior to him being let go by Gordon Strachan, so he played 2 games, albeit not competitive games, and he was thinking to himself, I've got a shoe in here, I'm going to break through into the first team. But he said that there had been a competition winner. Somebody had paid at an auction to manage the Celtic side. This is true. Someone had won an auction to manage the Celtic side against Newcastle and pick the team. And he gave the team talk in the dressing room. He said it was the most surreal moment of his entire football career. A fan who had paid big money to be the manager for the day gave the team talk and picked Charlie Mulgrew in the side. But apparently the guy was getting right into it. I think he had his initials on his jacket and everything. He's getting right into it and like getting stuck into the players and all that. Unbelievable scenes. He said, and what made it even worse was after that, the ref then comes in, right, and says that Alan Shearer is going to score the winner of the day, and it's going to be a penalty kick. And then it went out and happened. So it was just like a typical day in Scottish football, but it actually was set up that they would get a penalty, this guy would score it, and that would be the winner. And after that, you're thinking to yourself, right, okay, testimonials and bounce games have just died. However, we're playing Newcastle United. It's being billed as the Adidas trophy, and hopefully we see Kieran Tierney in the hoops that day. James Kirwan, you're in. You're watching it on YouTube. A very timid game of football for a derby. It was there for winning, but we gave them that. We gave them the history they don't want to see. 7 games without a win at Ibrox. Is there a trophy for that? Well, that's something they need to do. And it's this narrative. You're talking about a false competitive edge and all this kind of stuff, Liam. Brendan Rodgers comes away from that game and post-match he's getting asked about Rangers and how strong Rangers are and are they going to get stronger. It's just this constant narrative to try and create a rivalry and something that isn't there, like a league campaign in which there's front runners when there's not. They're trying to create this when it doesn't exist.
I did a blog about this earlier today, which you guys can read after today's show, obviously. But I was really angry with everything that happened on Sunday, and also with the way the media just tried to completely gloss over most of it. But see, the more I think about it, Celtic need to just completely sever any association we have with that other team. Like, anytime Brendan Rodgers gets asked about Rangers, he should just say, look, I'm a Celtic manager, not my problem. Because, we're talking about playing in the Adidas Cup. We're going to apparently be an elite Adidas brand team from next season. And being associated with fascists and bigots is not a good look for that level of marketing. So, no, we need to just sever all connections with that mob, and we shouldn't entertain any questions about them. And see if journalists don't take the hint and stop asking the stupid questions. They shouldn't be allowed in the press conferences.
Well, it's one of the things Ange gets a lot of kind of stick for, the way that he responds to absolutely stupid at times questions. Not just criticism, but just bland, stupid questions with no basis. And, we're going towards a treble. Brendan Rodgers is obviously juggling every day-to-day aspect of being the manager of the Celtic Football Club. And he's getting asked about, right? It's like making them relevant, constantly trying to maintain this false relevance. I want to talk a wee bit about our goal scorer at the weekend. I was looking at Adam Idah this morning, his record. He's 24-year-old, having just turned 24. Some might say, okay, he's all the player he's going to be. I don't agree with that. I think there's a lot of development there in Adam Idah. And that was his 18th goal of the season as a backup striker. I mean, he started the game, but as we've said, there's a lot of injuries in the Celtic side at the moment. I was looking at this. It's not yet an easy stat to find out, surprisingly. It used to be a big thing. I think he's only made 23 starts throughout the entire campaign, Lawrence. He's scored 18 goals. That's a decent return for a backup striker on base level data. How do you think he played? Do you think that he is unfairly criticised as our striker? Because I'm still hearing a lot of nonsense that he's maybe just an okay player.
Listen, I think he had a better second half than first half. He's done it in the Champions League. He's done it in big games for us. Probably suffering from not getting a run in the team, but Daizen's just been red hot. You thought Kyogo was going out. Maybe it'll be Adam's chance, but as Liam's been telling us for years, in steps Daizen, and he does what he does. He scored a barrel load of goals. So, yeah, I think you're right. There's a lot of development in him. And he's going to be a great player for him. But I said last week I would have started him anyway. I think he leads the line better there. The ball sticks to him more. I think in that game it's maybe better suited to him. And with Jota being out, we had to push Daizen wide anyway. But all in all, thought he did a good game. Certainly grew into the game. Should have done better with the shot in the first half. Should have played James in first half. Takes a goal well. Yeah, thought it was a decent return for him. And as you say, his backup striker, 18 goals, not a lot of minutes in the park. What is it we're looking for? Out of him as a backup striker that doesn't get a lot of minutes. I think 18 goals is a pretty good return, especially when he does it in big games.
Yeah, and he does. I mean, that's his third goal against Rangers. He's only had one start. By the end of this season, Lawrence, you're looking at a player who has won a double in his first campaign and played a pivotal role in doing so, and then potentially has won a treble in his second campaign. As you say, Champions League, that was his first campaign, done brilliantly. I mean, Adam Idah did brilliantly in that Champions League campaign when you look at his goals against the minutes that he's played. And he could go away with 20 goals this season as a backup striker. I think that we need to be realistic about it. Everybody keeps hanging their opinion on the transfer fee. Let's look at his performance. A wee bit like Engels, he gets brought into the exact same conversation.
Even for a return of 9 million, mate, for the minutes he's got, the goals he's scored, and he does it in big games.
Yep.
Is there anything wrong with that return?
What do you expect exactly? Flying Haggis, this just came in 430. We've actually got 1,400 live right now. The Flying Haggis on this stream. So I'm not sure where your figure has popped up, but we do have 1,400. Don't worry about us, mate. We're doing just fine with the viewers today. Thanks every single one of you for tuning in. Plunge McNugget says they've increased the cost of our season tickets and now they want 25 quid for a friendly. Not for me, boycott time. This has been raging actually on such a small thing, the announcement of a friendly, but it has been raging on all the Celtic groups that I'm a member of. People are not happy with it, and I can understand why. It's just a wee bit more value for money, I think, to your season ticket. We've spoken about Adam Idah there, Ian, and I do think that he is on a short leash. I was talking about this on Sunday to a couple of the Celtic fans who came along to the fan zone at Barra's Art and Design. There's certain players who we don't give much leeway to, and Adam Idah's one of them, isn't he?
Yeah, I like him a lot, and look, I was a little bit like that about Daizen last season and the season before, like a little bit of frustration. I think Idah he's got a lot really, and I think he has showed it in the big games. And I think as well, I know we're sort of saying he's backup striker. I know Brendan came out and said there was no backup striker. It was him and Kyogo were both sort of first choice strikers, albeit with the eye test it belied what he said there. But with the injury to Jota, let's give the guy a chance of being the main man, and just give him a run of games from the start. What else has he got to do really? I think his touch will come with more games if he's trusted more. And it's like you said before, Lawrence, about Sinisalo. He's got the jersey. Or was it you, Liam? Anyway, he's got the jersey, and I agree with that as well. I think even if Casper gets fit, I think there's a shout for him to sort of stay and keep the jersey. So I really like Idah. I think he's got a lot more to offer. He's got a good age. He's powerful. I think just a bit more of his awareness. And when I was watching the Frank McAvenny podcast 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he was talking about his education, and Jimmy Bone, I think it was, taught him at St Mirren, when he converted him into a striker, how to back in and how to hold the ball up and that kind of stuff. Maybe Frankie boy should get down there and show him a little bit, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way, because Frank McAvenny was one of the best strikers I've ever seen at Celtic Park. Only second only to Henrik, really, I think, for me. I think once he adds a little bit more to his game, but he has to have minutes on the pitch and he has to be trusted. So with Jota being injured, I'd like to see him getting that starting berth.
See, the thing with that point you made there, Ian, you look at I think it was on Instagram, it was a post by Maeda after the game, after winning his awards, because not only did he win the club award, he won the Scottish Player of the Year award as well. And he gave kudos to Harry Kewell, didn't he? You could see that there had been a development by Maeda being coached, like you say, by a specialist coach, right? And in terms of striker coaches, why not? Absolutely, why not? You get coached by our team of coaches, but why not? And the other player I've spoken to about that recently was John Hartson, who said that an old head called Mick Harford, I don't know if you remember big Mick Harford,
yeah, absolutely,
a few teams down south. And when John was at Luton, Mick Harford was the guy that kind of took him under his wing and taught him sometimes the dark arts of football as well, Ian. And Adam Idah does have development. He's just turned 24. I'm looking at him at the moment, 18. He's going for 20 goals this season as a backup striker. If he scores the winning goal, or if he scores an important goal in the Scottish Cup final, do we keep talking about the transfer fee after that? I think we need to stop it, to be honest, and move on. We need backup. We absolutely need backup. And in saying that, and I said it yesterday, I gave credit to Johnny Kenny. I thought he'd done really well when he came on. But I do think we need backup. Now, Paul
Bosas, we're talking about getting players back to coach, players, specialist coaches. Look what Lee Joe done. He paid for Jimmy Johnston to come in out of his own pocket and coach him at Celtic Park, because he'd been a striker before that. So Billy turned him into a winger. That's right. And he says, right, I'll pay Jimmy to come in and coach me. And I think Billy was watching me, one of the directors for the main stand at one point. I'm like, what's going on there? Well, I paid him to come in and coach me. And then obviously Billy sorted it out, getting Jimmy back as a coach.
I know. It's brilliant, Lawrence. And there's a lot to be. You might not have coaching badges. People get so hung up on this, but the know-how, the experience, and just having that now as a striker, as a winger, sometimes maybe even as a fullback or a defender, and you get that specialist. People talk about specialisms being the goalkeeper. That's the goalkeeper, the realms of a goalie coach, etc. But why not? I think he could learn. And it was very interesting, Ian, because Maka did say that he just needs a wee bit of that specific coaching. Paul Bosas, I've not seen this. I never saw it on any of the news sites that I was looking through this morning when I was preparing for today's show. It wouldn't surprise me though, Paul. Is it true that the Celtic B team has pulled out of the Lowland League? It wouldn't surprise me. It's something that I think we've been hamstrung by in relation to the fact that we cannot progress through the leagues. Therefore, you're playing young guys in the fifth year of Scottish football. And I think where it falls down is we've always got a group of players who need game time and they're not playing. I remember not that long ago, a player called, I'll give you the example, Marvin Compere was at the football club. He played 60 minutes of football in the entirety of his Celtic career. But what he did do is he played for the B team, the backup team, and they played a lot of their games at Capital. So he was getting football, right? And it kind of ties into what you guys have just been saying there. Whoever he's partnering, this is a German international footballer. You can laugh about him. He's turned into something of a joke figure at Celtic. A German international footballer, right? Playing it alongside maybe a 17-year-old centre-half. That 17-year-old's going to learn from him, right? So that's something that we didn't have with the B team. You talk, Liam, about some of the guys that are out on loan. Odin Thiago Home, Marco Tilio, they two guys last week spoke about the Celtic futures. Well, if they come back, they're not going to get any game time. So where do they go? They need to be loaned out. We were talking last week about the 17-year-old Australian Dylan Leonard. Right, come along to Celtic Park and we'll sign you as a prospect. you're not playing 5th-tier Lowland League football, are you? You're not coming over to Australia to play that level. So it wouldn't surprise me, Liam. It's an experiment. It's no worked.
You know, Celtic would be as well. I mean, you'd need to structure it a certain way with ownership rules, whatever. It'd be as well just shutting down the B team and buying a smaller team in, you know, maybe like League One or League Two, and just running with that. You know, buy Clyde or something and just make them our feeder club. That would just be, because all this nonsense about you can't get promoted and you can't, it's like, well, what's the point? I mean, you know, they can do it in Spain and Germany with no problem. As long as the A team and the B team are not in the same division, what's the problem?
I know. It is an issue. You just got to look at Arnie Engels, Liam. Arnie Engels' development at Bruges was through their 2nd-tier team who played in the 2nd-tier of Belgian football. And through his
Nicholas
appearances...
Kuhn as well. Did Nicholas Kuhn though start at Bayern's B team?
Bayern B, Ajax B. Yeah, absolutely. And they're
Ajax
playing
B,
in the
sorry,
pyramids. They're playing in the pyramids. Yeah. And I think that in order for us to develop the youngsters the way that we should be developing them, we need to get that right. But as I say, we're hamstrung by the league in which we play and the association that runs that, the authority within Scottish football. They do hold us back. I think partnerships are the way forward, some at home and some further afield as well. Another compare story. Yes, I love my compare stories. And if you've not
talk
heard
about holding back, I just don't think we've covered that Greg Taylor incident enough.
Holding back.
Still back in the box. Where was VAR? What were they doing?
Well, it wasn't even mentioned, was it? It wasn't even mentioned. And it's one of these things, Lawrence, where I think I have given credit to some of the decisions recently. I think there has been a sea change, and I put it down to Brendan Rodgers after Tynecastle, where he was obviously pulled over hot coals for his comments, right? And he was he got was it a ban, a couple of game ban or a suspended ban or whatever it might have been, and he called him out and he called him incompetent. And you look at what's happened since then in relation to the dossier of evidence that the KC took on Celtic's behalf that day. And then Crawford Allen, he steps down, Willie Collum comes in, more transparency, etc., etc. So I do think it's improved. But that was one incident that absolutely not much has been made of it. It was a penalty kick.
Yeah, it's clear as you'll say, you know, and we've had the Scottish press going crazy about Dessers been pulled in the box in Europe, and how could such a Stonewall penalty not be given? So, and obviously Andrew Dallas would have been watching Rangers in Europe. How does he miss it at the weekend? You know, it's Stonewall penalty.
I think it is.
We're not even attempting to play the ball.
Will it even? The thing is, will it even be discussed? You know, where you get your monthly kind of debrief from Willie Collum with Gordon Duncan. Will it even be discussed? Probably not. It probably won't even be discussed. But you're right, and obviously we have extensively spoken about the missiles being thrown on the park, the tifo, the chanting. We've spoken about that, and we'll continue to touch on it as the week progresses. We're looking ahead, obviously, to our next game, and it's going to be a slightly different starting 11 because CCV looks as though he's going to be arrested. Daizen Maeda may not be in. I don't think he'll be in the team. So a chance and an opportunity for some of the fringe players to get some game time. We have ran over. We still have 1,400 live on the stream. So thanks everybody for tuning in. If you're watching on the YouTube, give us a thumbs up, like the video, and subscribe to the channel. Our next live event is going to be at the end of the month with Alan Stubbs. We might have a thing or two to say about Scottish referees, and also Tosh McKinley. The link is underneath this video. Tickets are going fast. Thanks everybody for supporting what we do, and join us again tomorrow at 12:30 on A Celtic State of Mind.